And then I woke up gasping, and I'm really not sure where all the water came from at this point. Anyways, I'm Mike.
I'm Jim.
And this is Fanboy and the Hater,
A podcast about the best and worst in movies, TV, and pop culture. Mike, I want you to podcast me as hard as you can.
That's not appropriate. Do we have an HR department?
I wonder what we're going to talk about today.
Jim?
Mike!
Let's punch each other in the face. Verbally. Let's verbally punch each other in the face.
Yeah, because if it was not verbally, it would be over very, very quickly.
So today we are going to talk about, if you haven't figured it out yet, Fight Club, which to me is actually, it's one of my favorite movies. Another one that I could not even begin to count how many times I've seen it. In kind of our brief conversations about it to this point, I've yet to figure out something about this movie that I don't like. Jim, what are your thoughts?
I have also seen this movie many, many times. I'm not positive, but I think I may have even seen it in theaters when it first came out. I could be wrong about that because I'm much older than you. I was in my late 20s when this movie came out in 1999. I'm pretty sure I saw it in theaters. I really like this movie, and I have watched it many, many times, but I only recently rewatched it last night and a bit this morning for this podcast. Like when I went on the rewatch last night, I was like, oh, there were lots of things I forgot about. So it's been a while, but I have seen this movie many, many times. And I think this movie comes up a lot in many conversations, but when people talk about movies with significant plot twists, which is why one of the things that amuses me is that this movie and The Sixth Sense came out in the same year. Two movies that have a significant late in the movie plot twist that makes you reevaluate the entire movie. Two of those movies came out in the same year.
Which then started a trend of it.
Oh, yes. Now there's like lists of so many movies like that.
So like any movie you're watching, now you're just waiting for that twist. You're like looking for clues. Before this existed, you never really did that.
Yeah, it's one of the, I mean, there have been plenty of movies with plot twists, but with a plot twist that's revealed very late in the movie that makes you reevaluate the entire movie. And again, The Sixth Sense and Fight Club are not the only two that have done that, but they're probably two of the best examples, and it just amuses me that they both came out the same year.
Well, and to your point, like I've seen this movie so many times, and it's probably been 5 years since I watched it the last time, and I did not need to rewatch it. I could almost quote it word for word after many years of not watching it. Like everything is still exactly as I remembered it. And this is me we're talking about, the person that can't remember anything. And I remember pretty much everything about this movie. And to your point, look, to me, we kind of talked about this beforehand about the plot twist. Like once you already know the plot twist, then, is it really worth watching after that? Or how good is it in comparison? And to me, it's way better once you know the plot twist, because you're able to pick up on so many little things throughout the movie. And to me, that's what makes it better, is I'm still picking up on little things in the movie throughout the whole thing that kind of leads you to that plot twist.
Yeah, it's one of those things, it's like, it's been too long since I've seen it the first time. I think the first time you've seen it, when you don't know the plot twist, it's incredible. And then after you rewatch it, there are inferior movies, to your earlier point, where this type of thing was used again, but they were inferior in the sense that when you rewatch it after you know the plot twist, you can say, oh, well, it doesn't make sense. But this movie, it's amazing. Even when you know the plot twist, it's like, yes, there's a whole bunch of hints. Like I think someone did like a YouTube video that there's like 27 hints about what the plot twist is before the plot twist is revealed.
Shout out to 27 hints.
But the fact that the movie is so well constructed that you can rewatch, it's like, wow, it's amazing that it actually all works.
Well, and the fact that they actually address it, that they show like, oh, plot twist, and here's what it actually looked like to the people who weren't really there watching the movie with us, to the people that were actually there. Oh yeah, he hands him the beer bottle. He just drops it instead of handing it to him. Oh, he was just punching himself in the face over and over again. And then it kind of also like looks at like, oh, that's why those guys had such weird looks on their faces. It wasn't just that these two guys were punching each other, but it was one guy punching himself. And what the fuck is going on with that?
Or even like there's like a lot of like weird conversations between Edward Norton and Helena Bonham Carter, which are just weird conversations.
Yeah,
But then when you rewatch it, it's like, okay, it is weird. And it's understandable why she was confused, but it's also understandable that she would have been like, he's just fucking with me. Like, not like he's acting weird and I don't understand. He's acting weird, maybe because he's just fucked up. So the fact that the way that the conversations are held, it makes sense. Like it's just like, oh, it doesn't like fall apart on the rewatch and say, oh, now that I know the twist, none of that makes sense. It's actually a very well constructed story in that respect.
and I think there's also a little bit again going back to the little things throughout the movie is okay. A lot of the movie is focused on that just the mental illness or the mental aspect of the main character,
Mm-hmm.
but also Helena Bonham Carter's character, like she deals with that abuse and keeps coming back to it and everything and keeps getting involved in it. And why would she continue to do that? But then they've established she is a messed up person. She's got problems and somebody's actually paying attention to her. And that's what she actually, all she really wanted was somebody to pay attention to her, negative or positive.
Yeah, if she was like a more like normal person, she would have probably flagged things from the beginning. But because
Right.
she's also a weird person, and also they meet with this shared thing with like Edward Norton's character suffering from insomnia, and the only way he can break that is he gets addicted to going to therapy support groups, even for things that he shouldn't be going to, like the Testicular Cancer Survivors Club, which is where one of the many places he meets Helena Bonham Carter's character, and they just keep seeing each other going to the same support groups all over and over again. And it's cathartic for Ed Norton's character, and it allows him to sleep, and it pisses him off because she's basically doing the same thing as he is, and it's making it not work for him. And he gets mad at her, but he's doing the same thing. And then the whole thing is like, she's like, you're in the testicular support club. It's like, I actually don't have balls. I can't be in this club. You're the one that's lying more than me. So it's like that whole weird, like they're two weird people that are misusing these support groups. And again, which in and of itself would actually be kind of an interesting movie if that was just a movie. Just these two fucked up people who met in that weird way would kind of be an interesting movie. But then we get the whole Tyler Durden, Brad Pitt entrance to the movie, which just takes the whole movie to a whole other level. It does kind of, to a certain extent, sideline Helena Bonham Carter to a certain extent, but without question, Brad Pitt's the best part of this movie. So once he arrives in the movie gets immensely better. Not that it was bad before, but it's like, it's his movie from the jump as soon as he enters. And like all of the like most quotable parts of the movie, like every speech that Brad Pitt gets to give is just phenomenal, and his performance, not to jump ahead, but it's like I think this is the best Brad Pitt movie, or at least the best Brad Pitt performance. That's probably a better way to say that.
The only one that I want to argue on is 12 Monkeys.
That is also a pretty crazy over the top performance, and it is also a good movie. But I think I've definitely seen Fight Club more than I've seen 12 Monkeys.
It's pretty close for me. And the way I gauge it is like how well are they within character the whole time? How incredibly different is that character than other characters, and how complete of a person are they and everything. I just think the 12 Monkeys character would be harder to play consistently, and so that's the only reason I would give it to that character instead. But to your point, it is a fantastic character and a fantastic performance for that character. And this is one of those really weird times where it's a movie based on a book, and I have actually read the book.
Shocking.
I know, right? And
What was the book good?
yeah, the book's fantastic, and they're very close to the same. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole quite yet, but it's this movie very much about like hitting rock bottom and everything. And the author, most of his books that were hits, close to hits ish, whatever, Chuck Palahniuk, like all of them are different variations of hitting rock bottom, and kind of where that goes and what that leads people to. So this one in particular, I just think is interesting enough for enough people to make it more popular than the other books. But I did find it interesting, and this led me down the rabbit hole of like, well, let me read this book because I like this movie so much. Oh, he's got other books. Let me check those out too. And I've probably read 4 or 5 of his books,
Wow.
surprisingly. And other ones have been made movies, but just not known movies because nobody saw them because they weren't adapted as well either.
Yeah, I know that the author had said that it was a faithful adaptation of his book, but he also thought that some of the things they did in the movie were even better than they were handled in the book, which is probably just down to visual storytelling allows you to do things that you just can't
Yeah.
do in a book, and that made it better.
Well, speaking of storytelling, there's one more thing about the plot is the non-linear storytelling, which it is and it isn't non-linear.
Not in the sense that when most people think of it, it's usually something that jumps around a lot. This is nonlinear in the sense that it begins at the end, and then the vast majority of the movie is a flashback, but it's a continuous flashback, meaning that we don't, like in most nonlinear storytelling that I don't like, you would jump from, we open at the end, near the end of the movie with Brad Pitt has his gun in Edward Norton's mouth. In the type of nonlinear storytelling that annoys me, we would have jumped back to that point many times. But in this movie, we open with that, we then jump back to the beginning of the story, and then almost the entire movie then takes you back to the beginning and the end, and then it's just like another 10 minutes. So it's not as nonlinear as things that annoy me that are nonlinear, but it definitely has a nonlinear structure.
And it leads up to me, one of the funniest jokes in the entire thing. And this is what I really wanted to bring up because it took me a few watches before I caught it.
Flashback humor?
Yep, exactly. So the very beginning, he has gun in the mouth. Is there anything you want to say? And he says, I can't think of anything, but you can't really hear it. And when you're gun in your mouth, you only speak in vowels, etc.
Mm-hmm.
The end of the movie, when he says it again, he goes, I still can't think of anything. And then Brad Pitt goes, flashback humor. I never understood what he said there because I've laughed every single time.
Mm-hmm.
And until today, with the subtitles on, I never knew that he said flashback humor there.
Now, I am an older gentleman, now in my mid-50s, so I have a tendency to watch things with closed caption on anyway. I think this is a great movie to watch with closed captioning on. Because, you might not have caught the flashback humor joke. And again, there's so many like speeches and great lines. It's a highly quotable movie. It's probably something I would recommend. Keep those closed captioning on. But that was a fantastic, which is again, kind of back to that whole like plot twisty thing. It's like, it is a very self-aware movie. And on the rewatch, you pick up all the little breadcrumbs of the little jokes that they're making all the way through the movie. It's just like, wow, this is a fantastic job.
Yeah, very much. And to your point too, like I normally, like most of my life, I've never liked subtitles because I find myself missing the visuals because I'm reading the subtitles the whole time.
That can be a downside to it, yeah.
But to your point, this time, like watching it, like there's a lot of things, there's a lot of rants that he goes on that I never really fully picked up what he was saying because like I was thinking about the last thing he said and missing the current thing that he's saying and never really pieced it all together. But when you have the subtitles on, you can actually see everything like, oh, it pieces it together a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, because he has some pretty extensive monologues where you can miss things.
Yeah.
If you don't have closed caption on, or you can just hit rewind and listen again. But
and he's got a lot of very good points through it too, like a lot of stuff that he's talking about, and I think that's really what a lot of people attach to is the ideas of what the things that he was saying.
I'm over here laughing because I looked down at my notes and there was a quote from the movie, which I think is both germane to what we're talking about and also germane to this podcast in general. So when Edward Norton and Helena Bonham Carter meet in the support group, she asks him, like, why do you like coming to these things? And Ed Norton says, when people think you are dying, they really, really listen instead of just waiting for their turn to speak. So that works for me on two levels. It is a movie that you really, really have to listen to. It's a very visually stimulating movie, but there's a lot being said in this movie that you do have to really, really listen to because there's a lot of great stuff. But it's also a great joke for this podcast, which like Jim, me, won't shut the fuck up and let Mike talk. So I'm working on trying to really, really listen.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great things that he talks about that I think is really what a lot of people, the people that like this movie, attach to is like, we're the crap of the world. You know, everybody shits on us. We're never going to be what we wanted to be. We're never going to make it. We're never going to be special. That really pisses a lot of us off.
Well, I think that's a great entry because when this movie came out, you were not old enough to see it yet in theaters,
Yeah,
right?
I would have been probably 16.
Okay.
That's not necessarily when I saw it,
Right.
but that's when it came out.
I mean, I was 28, which is why I not only do I think I saw it in theaters, but I mean, I was definitely old enough to see it. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was sort of like the perception of the movie now versus then when it came out. So, like, when this movie came out in 1999, I was very much like Edward Norton's character in a sense. I was literally a corporate drone. I was in a high paying white collar job that required me to travel all around the country on a regular basis and was really feeling the oppressive weight of corporate culture, of what it really felt like to just be a cog in the machine of a job like that. It's like that part really resonated with me because that was who I was at the time, as well as the fact that the 90s were a really weird fucking time to be an adult. Because, like the movie says, Brad Pitt's character says, like, we don't have our Great War, we don't have our Great Depression. People have to remember, it's like, this is a few years before 9/11, and we got our Great War with the global war on terror. This was a little less than a decade before the 2008 financial crisis, which gave us our generation's Great Depression. So it's like the themes of the movie when the movie came out resonated differently with me then than they do now. They still work. I'm not saying that they don't work now, but it's like, I really liked the movie then because of how much it seemed to speak to me and to the times we're in. There were other themes of the movie, like the violence and stuff, didn't speak to me, but the existential dread of being a working adult in the 90s really spoke to me. And again, there's some other things we can talk about it in terms of then versus now, but like, you don't remember like when you saw this movie though, right? So you were a teenager when it came out.
Yeah, I would have probably been late teens when I saw it for the first time and immediately attached to it and watched it over and over and over again.
Because you probably watched it on DVD, right? This is what you
Yeah.
probably would have seen it long after it was out of the theater.
Probably.
Because this was also one of those. 99 was also a very bad year for movies with violent themes involving guns. Because the Columbine shooting happened there, which at the time was the worst school shooting in American history. And it led to a lot of movies being, any movie that was in the theaters at that time that involved people shooting guns was pulled out of the theater, which is weird to think of in today's, where we are now, nearly 30 years later. But it was definitely a reflexive thing in the late 90s. There was temporarily this anti-violent film thing that was triggered around that time.
And what brought me into it, and I never would have pieced that together because those are such. It's a movie. It's a fucking movie.
Well, it's a fucking movie, but you were also you were in high school still at that time.
Well, that's kind of my point, though, is like Columbine happened at a high school.
True.
I was very aware of that. But this had nothing to do with a high school. It had nothing to do with shootings. It had nothing to do with any of it. So people jump to conclusions a lot, and I want to talk about that more later. But right now, just kind of like at the time as a teenager, you know, again, late teens when I saw it, and I was very, very angry teenager into my 20s, like very angry at the world about everything. And, you know, I started working really young. I worked a lot, like basically one of those people that never really had a teenage life because I just worked all the time.
Did you have 9 jobs and make soap at night?
Basically. Basically. But that was kind of one of the things, like I was watching it, like everything that he's saying, again, the themes of the movie, of the ideas that he's talking about being, just feeling like you're shit on, being a cog in the wheel, like you said. And I just kind of was in a spot where I'm like, oh, this is all I'm going to do my entire life is just work this shitty job, or one of these shitty jobs, or many of these shitty jobs, or whatever it is, never going to amount to anything, never actually going to accomplish any of my life goals. This is all I'm going to be able to do. And I was already pissed about it, and I was just starting.
And for me, and again, it's difficult to imagine again the '90s versus today. The anti-consumerism message of the movie in the '90s, there was again, it's funny to think of it because it's not like a lot has changed, but there was this big consumerism thing in the '90s of like we're losing out, we're just becoming consumers, like the movie says, like we have ads that are making us work jobs that we hate so that we can buy shit we don't need. That's like the fucking theme of the entire decade of the '90s. And like I said, I was in a high paying white collar job where I had way too much disposable income. I wasn't flipping through the IKEA catalog, but that whole idea is like, I have money. What dumb shit should I spend it on? Was definitely very much a theme of the '90s, especially at that point where I was at my life. Obviously, that theme has continued. It hasn't like it's gone away. But like I said, the movie hit very differently, I think, than for me.
Is that why you have so many Ferraris?
Exactly. So it's like those types of messages, like the anti-consumerism message, and that whole it made sense. It was it still resonates and has meaning today, but back then it really tapped into something. And like you said, the angry teenager impulse makes sense. There were also a lot of angry adult men, like, and so again, and we can get into this too in terms of like what the point in the movie is, but now looking at it, I still think the movie is good, but it's interesting to look back at the other things that have changed. And not only did 9/11 happen and the global financial crisis happen, but this was like a movie before the internet had reached its apex, a movie before social media, a movie before technology became so ingrained in our lives and further disconnected us from making meaningful connections with other people. So those themes were still present in the movie then. Those are just become even worse since then. So I think it still has a message that makes sense and is thought-provoking to people to look at now. And I actually often, we'll talk more about the violence later, but I usually look past a lot of the violence in the movie, and I really like a lot of the ideas in the movie more, which we can come back to later. But I think it still is meaningful today, maybe in a slightly different way than it was back then.
Yeah, as you're talking about that, I'm thinking about kids that grew up in the 2000s trying to go back and watch that movie now, thinking like, oh, why didn't they just have group chats, or why didn't they just do like,
yeah, the idea that Edward Norton's character has to fly around the country to go find people. It's like, yeah, why don't you just jump on YouTube and record a video?
Yeah. But then, and one of the things that I think about is like, well, to me, that is kind of part of the point of the movie is anti that stuff, like anti separation. It's bringing people together. It is sharing in commonalities. It's person to person contact. And so I don't know that it would work the same way. I don't know that it would. It's not that it's not possible, obviously.
One of the other things that I didn't really think about until I heard someone else mention this who was much younger than either of us. Someone who watched the movie for the first time in recent years, and their first response to the movie was like, was MMA not a thing? Because they were like, Fight Club, I mean, yeah, guys like to like get into like real fights with each other. Isn't that just what MMA is? And from my memory, because I'm not a big MMA fan, I don't remember MMA being a thing back in the 90s. Or at least maybe it was around, but I just didn't know about it.
Yeah, it was definitely a thing, but it didn't become popular until more early to mid 2000s.
Okay.
And that's about when I kind of stumbled upon it, and somebody showed it to me, and I started getting into it as well. That's really when it started, like UFC really started getting public, like people really started to know about it. So yeah, at the time it wasn't a thing and nobody really thought about it. And
like it's called an underground boxing thing in the movie. Yeah. Nowadays people, it's like, oh, you mean they just created an amateur MMA club?
Yeah. Well, it brings up a conversation too, and I'm never gonna forget this. I actually had a conversation with my mom about this when I was in my mid-20s.
Okay.
And it was about violence, and it was about mosh pits.
Oh.
So I am a metalhead, as many of you probably already know if you're regular listeners. And I grew up like around this time frame, like I was going to concerts and I was getting involved in mosh pits, and I was trying to explain to my mom like, why do we do that? Why do we do these things? What does it do? And I brought up I was actually you could probably find me. I was in a newspaper about getting into a fight in a mud pit at Ozfest with my best friend, and we literally went in there and we just beat the shit out of each other in this mud pit until we just basically couldn't go anymore. And then we just stopped, and then other people came in, like people were taking turns doing this, and I was trying to explain like it's a brotherhood. It brings you closer together. It lets you, it makes you feel closer to other people in a way that nothing else really does. And we had actually talked about, based off this movie, like, should we start fight clubs? Like, should we actually have like a thing there? Because there is something there. It's a way of mutually getting out aggression. And there's a lot of people that fight in ways that it allows you to mentally prepare for what could happen in real life. You know how to react, you know what to do. It also allows you to understand like where the limits are, where you really hurt somebody, and where when you should stop. So
Mhm.
that's a big conversation in like, jujitsu and stuff, of like police officers should be trained in jujitsu because it teaches you all the things that you need to know when you're in that kind of situation.
My closest thing to a Fight Club moment is one of the things that was big where I grew up in the Northeast. I took martial arts as a teenager and
What?
I know, isn't this hilarious? Yes, Mike's like, what the fuck are you talking about? So like through my teenage years and into my early 20s, I took karate. And it was largely back then, it was really just,
This is their video. I need video.
this was before social media. It would be all over YouTube. It was then. Back then, though, there was like this like martial arts as exercise type of thing, but there was also this sort of like teach kids how to fight so that they won't have to fight type of thing, like which was kind of probably popularized by the Karate Kid movies and stuff like that. So I took karate, but I continued to take it like into my early 20s. But like when I got into my early, a lot of times when in those classes, you would spar, but no one would actually hit anyone. And in most cases, you would also be wearing pads and stuff like that. But when I was in my early 20s, I was in an adult martial arts class at the same dojo that I went to as a kid. And I got paired off by height with this dude who was a Vietnam veteran. And when we sparred, he fought. He hit me, knocked me down. I was like, and it was pissing me off. And his response was like, this is what a real fight is like. You just want to dance around and shadow box. It's like, what the fuck is that going to do? It's like, if you're ever in a real fight, the shit that they're teaching you here means nothing unless you do it for real. And of course, I shortly thereafter stopped taking that class. But that whole mentality of like in the movies, like you were saying, if you're ever in a real fight, could you actually handle yourself?
Yeah.
And that was this guy's point. It's like most of the people who were taking this martial arts class are not taking it for fighting. But it's like,
Yeah.
if you because there was also like a kid, a black belt who went to that dojo, who came to class one day all black and bruised and all fucked up because he got in a real fight and got his fucking ass kicked. So what we learned in those classes was not how to fight. It was just cardiovascular exercise.
Yeah.
And this guy that I was sparring with was trying to make that point. It's like, it's probably not the place for you, but it's like, if you think this is teaching you how to fight, no, it's not.
Well, and you brought up MMA earlier, and that's a common conversation in MMA, in the world of MMA, is like, there's a reason you don't see Taekwondo and karate at the top levels of MMA, because it doesn't really work in a real fight.
Right.
Aspects of it do, but generally speaking, it does not.
Or if you do them, it's not like you see in a movie where you're going back and forth. It's like, if you actually execute the maneuver, the fight is over.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, so that's why I like going back to what I said before. It's like, having come to it before MMA was a thing, I could at least relate to it on that level. And again, there's always been like amateur boxing clubs and stuff like that. So it's like, there's always been, not like it's portrayed in the movie, but there's always been some aspects of fighting.
Yeah, and underground bare knuckle boxing and stuff like that. Yeah, it happens. Going back a little bit to, as you said, you remember when this movie actually came out, and you were actually involved in, or remember the conversations about the movie when it came out. I do not. I was not I hated the news. I refused to watch any of it.
Hmm.
I did not keep up with social issues at all. I was too busy. I had too much shit going on.
Hmm.
But you do remember it, and you remember there was a lot of social issues.
There were a lot of social issues, but and some of this ties together. Like I remember the director and even Brad Pitt and Ed Norton, when they were doing interviews about this, kept coming back to a lot of people saying you don't understand the point of the movie, because like there was a lot of negative backlash against the portrayal of violence in the movie and sort of the antisocial concepts in the movie and some of the social issues which we can get into. But like a lot of times the writer director and the stars are like, you're missing the point that this is satire. This is not, hey, everyone should go around and beat the crap out of each other and blow buildings up. That's not the point of the movie. But that was like the immediate like backlash to the movie about, there was even like, you know who Rosie O'Donnell is?
Yeah.
Back in the 90s, Rosie O'Donnell had a popular talk show. Not quite as popular as Ellen or Oprah, but she was an influencer before we use that term. She had a talk show. Not only did she come out and tell her audience not to see the movie, she spoiled the movie. She's like, Brad Pitt's not a real person. Ed Norton and Brad Pitt are playing the same character. He's having an hallucination. She just like fucking spoiled the entire movie. And they were pissed. They were like, what the fuck? That's just a dick move to do. But she was just trying to say, this movie is a piece of trash. It's glorifying violence. You shouldn't watch it. And they're like, like, first off, fuck you for doing that, of ruining the movie for people who haven't seen it yet. But secondly, you're missing the entire fucking point of the movie. And most people who start to like focus in on, I do want to get to a category of social issues which you can kind of put under the umbrella of terrorism, which is a little, again, you have to remember this was before 9/11, but I want to come back to that. Like the Project Mayhem part of the movie, I'd like to come back to, but just like the Fight Club part of the movie, I think people even misunderstand the point of that. We've already touched upon it a little bit with the MMA stuff, but I think a lot of people didn't understand, both then and maybe even now, that the movie was a satirical view of the way where we were as a culture back then, as society, and the feelings of isolation and maybe violent fantasies and stuff like that. But it wasn't like here's what you should do. I think anytime people see a movie that they focus in on something that they don't like, they start arguing about it as if it's like a documentary. It's like, it's a fucking movie.
Yeah. Well, but it hits on those people that were against that, and like the Rosie O'Donnells of the world and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Of course they're going to hate that because they don't understand it.
Exactly.
There are groups of people that this movie spoke to, as we touched on, that were very angry, have instinctive need for violence. Mm-hmm. Going back to historical, ancestral, hunter-gatherer, like, violence is in our blood as humans. Not everybody, but it's in our blood. And of course, if you are a very non-violent, don't understand violence person, you're probably going to hate this movie, and you're not going to understand it at all. If you've got natural violence tendencies, that's probably going to be the part that interests you. And again, going back to me saying, like, I was thinking about starting an underground fighting club because controlled, voluntary, and a way to get out that aggression without hurting somebody that wasn't involved.
Right. And again, there were some fight clubs that were obviously not like the fight clubs in the movie, but there were, again, like I go back to, like, it's not really all that different than joining a boxing gym, or nowadays maybe joining an MMA gym, or going and taking martial arts class. There are ways to vent that aggression and ways that you can do it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that like for me, a lot of times I think that the violence, I kind of look past the violence because I don't really see that's the point of the movie. I'm more interested in like its stance on like the anti-consumerism is like, and how we've become, and again, it's still true today, a consumer-driven culture, and we're working jobs we hate to buy shit we don't need type of stuff, and the artificial life progression. Like this one scene in the movie where Brad Pitt and Norton are talking about, it's like, my dad wanted me to go to college because he never went to college. Okay, so I went to college and I called my dad. I went to college. Now what do I do? Get a job. Okay, got a job. And talk to him a few years later. Okay, now I got a job. And then what am I going to do? Get married, have kids. It's like, really? Is this all that fucking life is? This whole idea is like this series of things that you're supposed to do because society expects you to do them. Those are the types of things that I find more interesting. I mean, a lot of times they get explored through violent means in the movie, but I don't really see that as like the point of the movie. It's sort of a look at isolationism and trying to find your place in the world, the violent tendencies and anger that bubbles up anyway, not as a means in and of itself, but as a reflection of this existential angst, and just trying to
Yeah.
make sense of the world and how to relate and connect to other people.
So let's go ahead and move to Project Mayhem, because my thoughts on everything you just said, leading into also the quote unquote terrorism part of Project Mayhem,
Mm-hmm.
and to me what the whole point of the movie is, all ties together.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go ahead and go to that part, because that's actually where you kind of lost the movie a little bit.
Well, that's where I kind of like lose interest in the movie. I still, all throughout the movie, I always enjoy it because there's always like again a Brad Pitt speech or something like that that is good to watch. But like the one thing about like the going from Fight Club to Project Mayhem is Fight Club was, which is actually even one of the jokes in the movie. Like the first rule of Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club. The second rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club. And then I think the third rule is if this is your first time here, you have to fight tonight. So at one point in the movie, Brad Pitt's going, and we later know that it's Ed Norton's like, there's a lot of new faces here tonight, and everyone's laughing. And he goes, so that means you're not following the first rule of Fight Club, which is in itself a joke. Because if there's something that you're involved in where the rule is you're not allowed to talk about it, then how the fuck do other people join it?
Yeah.
Obviously, you're going to connect with other people and bring them in, but that whole idea of, though, when it was just the Fight Club part, it was sort of a people were choosing to join this because it like awoke something in them. The very first part of project, before we get into actual Project Mayhem, the prerequisite to that is the homework assignments. The first homework assignment is one of my favorites. It's the go start a fight with someone and lose.
Is it your favorite because it'd be the only way you'd win a fight?
Yes. But it leads to one of my, what I think is one of the funniest scenes. There's lots of great scenes in the movie, but when the people get that homework assignment, there's a guy with a hose, and he says, they show a sequence that's like, it's really hard to start a fight with. They show them like messing with people, and like generally speaking, like people are like, well, what about like the people who would have thought Fight Club was fucked up and wouldn't have joined? In that sequence, you see a bunch of people like, what the fuck is wrong with you people? But in that sequence, the guy with the hose is like spraying people walking by, and most people just like get pissed and walk away. A priest walks by, and he sprays the priest with the hose. And the priest tries to engage with him, sprays the priest with the hose. It's like, why are you doing this? And he keeps spraying the priest with the hose. And then the priest
slaps the Bible out of his
slaps
hand.
the Bible out of his hand. He's spraying the Bible. The priest loses it and starts wailing the crap out of the guy. And then the priest joins the Fight Club and becomes a part of it. This is the self-selection part of the movie where people violating the first rule of Fight Club or on the homework assignment have chosen to join Fight Club as part of a camaraderie of other people who want to get together and fight each other. In other words, you're not involving anyone who is not choosing to be a part of this.
Yeah.
Project Mayhem then takes it outside of the group.
Before you get there, I want to talk about one real quick thing about it. About people talking about and breaking that first rule.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of my favorite scenes is between Bob and the narrator.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, oh, we haven't seen each other in a long time. What have you been doing? Well, the first rule is I'm not supposed to talk about it. And the second rule is I'm not supposed to talk about it. Oh, look at my face. I'm a member.
Mm-hmm.
Like that part, it's like, oh, that's how they get around talking. They can talk about it without talking about it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because I always love that part.
Oh yeah, that's why like even all throughout the movie you can tell who's like in on it and not in on it. Like even like the the bus driver on the bus that Helena Bonham Carter gets on near the end of the movie, you know that the bus driver is in Fight Club because the bus driver has a black eye. Like, it's pretty
Yeah.
consistent. It's not always the case. We can come back to the fact that there should have been a lot more badly injured people other than the few people who are really badly injured. But anyways, that's where we start to transition. Like I was just saying, when it was just a Fight Club, it was like people who wanted to be a part of this coming together, and they were getting something out of it other than just the violence. They were getting the camaraderie. They were getting a sense of purpose. They were finding meaning in that.
And learning about themselves.
And learning about themselves.
I love that line, though. How much can you know about yourself if you've never been in a fight?
Correct.
Which I've never been in a fight.
I've not in what I would call a real fight, no. Which is also why it's really funny. The very first fight in the movie is actually intentionally real. When Ed Norton punches Brad Pitt in the ear, that's real. The director told Ed Norton to do that. So when Brad Pitt's like, the ear? Come up, the ear? Why the ear? That's a real scene. I mean, he told Brad Pitt that Ed Norton was really going to punch him. He just didn't know that he was going to get punched in the ear. But David Fincher's like, punch him in the ear. David Fincher was the director of the movie. So it's once we get outside of Fight Club and into Project Mayhem, I'm not saying that part of the movie is bad. It got a little bit less interesting to me because then they were like fucking with people who were not a part of their club.
Yeah. Well, and you brought up a good point too about like, oh, the plan of what they're doing to try to wipe out the debt to zero wouldn't actually work.
No.
And to me, that's again, just to tie it all together, to kind of wrap up my whole thoughts on the whole thing, kind of put it together. You get the Fight Club, the camaraderie, you know, that sounds great to somebody with violence in mind.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds great of somebody that's looking for their place in the world, trying to figure out a way of getting out their aggression in a non, I was going to say non-violent, but it is a violent way, but like a non-social disrupting way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not messing with things, not getting into trouble for it because it's all voluntary. And then it proceeds into Project Mayhem, where that starts to escalate. Now they're starting to become violent with other things. It becomes involuntary. It becomes disruptive. It becomes worse and worse and worse. And a lot of people that were fighting against it saying like, oh, this movie is promoting that stuff. I was like, no. That is the point of the movie. That if you start doing this, it is going to progress and it's going to get to the point where you are affecting things and you are messing things up and you are not going to end up in a good situation. So to me, it's actually anti-fighting, anti-terrorism, anti all of that stuff because it's showing how terrible of an idea it is.
Well, that goes back to my point before. It's like people not understanding the movie is satire. The
Right.
movie was not glorifying or promoting what it is. It was showing that these things were bad. My only point was that when it was just the Fight Club, you could argue, and some people could argue that that's a step across the line of violence. They were still just fucking each other up.
Yeah.
And again, it's just like having an amateur boxing ring or an MMA club or something like that, what we talked about. But when they got the attention of the police and the whole idea that they were even called a terrorist organization, and even Edward Norton's character, when he tries to surrender himself, calls himself the leader of a terrorist organization. It didn't really become that until they started doing shit like wrecking coffee shops and blowing up buildings and setting stores on fire and, you know, threatening to cut the cops' balls off if he didn't call off the task force's search for them because they were doing something. They were negatively impacting people outside of the club. And then again, the whole Project Mayhem thing of blowing up these 10 buildings that the credit card companies had their stuff in so it could reset to zero, which again, I'm an IT person. It's like that would have had no fucking effect on anything. But again, blowing up a building is a significantly different thing. Although again, to the movie's credit, they did make the point. They made sure that it was done at night when the buildings were empty. So they weren't trying to kill anybody. They were trying to set people free. And even like this one, other poignant movie moment in the scene just before Project Mayhem, when they go to, I think, like a 7-Eleven and Tyler, Brad Pitt's character, drags the clerk out into the alley and he puts a gun to his head and the guy thinks he's going to get killed. And he's like, what would you do with your life if you're about to die? What do you really wish you had done with your life? I wish I had become a veterinarian. It's like, okay, I'm going to come check up with you in 6 weeks. If you are not taking steps to actually become a veterinarian, I'm going to fucking kill you. And the guy runs away, and Edward Norton's like, what the fuck was that? And he gives him the gun, and there's no bullets in the gun. So Brad Pitt was not really going to kill that guy. He was just trying to hit rock bottom, realize that what you're doing in your life is not working out, and if there's something that you really want to fucking do with your life, then start fucking doing it.
And he also makes a point there, like, tomorrow's going to be the best day of his life.
The breakfast he eats tomorrow is going to be the best meal that he or we have ever tasted. His life is going to be transformed in an incredible way. That's pretty cool. That's a good example. Then they get into the whole Project Mayhem of blowing buildings up and stuff, and that's when it gets into the more terroristy type of stuff. But even then, the point of that was to try to, again, the anti-consumerism message and the whole thing, you are not, whatever the line is, like the contents of your wallet or your bank account. It's like how much money you have and how much possessions you've accumulated. That's not who you are. Wipe that slate clean for yourself or for everybody else and focus on what you want in life and being who you are. Like the whole idea of it's only after we've lost everything that we're free to do anything. So this whole like resetting to baseline, take your fucking life seriously, figure out what you want to do, and anything that you're not doing that is working towards what you're trying to achieve, then you're just fucking wasting your life. That to me is like the message in the movie. The violence and the terrorist type of stuff, that's like all the little movie making, like icing on the cake. And that goes back to my point, is like people misunderstood the point of the movie. The point was what I just said. So I could see people not liking some of the elements. The Project Mayhem stuff went a little bit, for me, it didn't ruin the movie for me. I still like it. But it's like, I think if they just stuck to the Fight Club part and maybe dealing with people on an individual basis part, the blowing up buildings part was a little bit weird, which again, the now versus then thing. 2 years later, 9/11 happens. In a movie with buildings being blown up and falling down for a couple of years, this movie was understandably not very popular.
So I think, though, also the movie made a point to point out in a couple of different places that most of the people involved in Project Mayhem weren't exactly the brightest bulbs in the tool shed, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
They specifically showed that in many different areas. Again, are you actually watching the movie, or are you just taking it at face value, under like not even looking at it, just saying, oh, this is what it's about? Okay, no, I'm not watching it. It's stupid.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to actually think about it. Yeah, and that's, again, to me, one of the things that makes the movie great is you have to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the few ones that we've talked about this in the past, how like you like to watch movies little bits at a time and like stop and think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the few movies that I do actually stop and think about.
Yeah, I mean, you can see people arguing that, especially like after the age of social media and a lot of the things that have happened with the rise of populist politics, a lot of people, or even before then, like in the rise of social media and then 4chan and QAnon and populist politics, but like, how could people believe these stupid conspiracy theories and be pulled into these weird, like cult-like environments? And you can take a look at the movie as like, well, they show like the cult of consumerism was what we were addicted to. And isn't it just being replaced with the cult of personality and like how easily people can fall for one or the other thing? I can say, yes, but again, the bottom line message, again, of Tyler Durden is like, fucking start living your life. It's like, stop fucking chasing whatever you think you're supposed to be doing. Like, get down to your baseline, figure out like what you're supposed to be doing, and then do that. Now, he doesn't mean then do that by go kill people and blow up buildings and be violent. It's like, fucking take your life seriously.
Yeah.
And the whole idea is like, oh, how could people be sucked into that? Sadly, in the world we live in today, we've seen plenty of examples over the last decade of how easily people can get swayed by the downside and evils of social media and the twisted views of populist politics. We know it can happen, but it also comes down to that same fundamental underlying human thing of playing off of like existential angst, playing off of like some violent tendencies or unsettling thing when you feel your life is not going the way it's supposed to be going, and someone giving you a message to follow that you could say, like the people who were following Tyler Durden were not the brightest bulbs in the circuit. but it's a believable thing. I mean, some of them were also like there were cops and other people involved. It seemed like he was turning a lot of people to his way of thinking. But again, point of the movie, it's satire, which again, at the time, people were like, well, this is fucked up. This would never happen. I would argue a lot of fucked up things have happened in the real world since the movie has come out. It was like, yes, it was just like, even just to use social media, and then I'll shut up. When social media first started to rise, people were like, oh, this is magnificent. People are going to be able to get online and find their people, and it's going to bring everybody together. And my response back then was like, oh, this is going to be fucking bad because people are going to be able to get online and find their people. Yeah. And again, it can be good or bad. And unfortunately, we've seen a lot of the bad side of that.
People remember negatives a lot better than remember positives.
Oh yeah, it's definitely it's a negative negativity bias in psychology. It's like a negative experience always holds stronger sway in the human mind than positive. If you disagree with that statement, compare a time when someone insulted you versus a time when someone complimented you. Which one are you fucking more likely to remember a month later? When someone insulted you. Right. It doesn't mean that bad is better than good or that evil triumphs good. It just means that negative experiences hold higher weight. It's also the same reason why is news so negative? The old, if it bleeds, it leads. Negative news is what people want to hear about. And
that's, I mean, the algorithms, the social media algorithms, they prove it over and over and over again. Exactly. People engage more with negativity.
Exactly. What do human beings like to see? Story is about human beings whose lives are worse than theirs. Make me feel better about myself by showing bad things happening to other people.
So with that, I want to go back to something that you mentioned like 5 hours ago. That scene with the 7-Eleven clerk, and he takes his license and says, I'm going to check up on you. Mm-hmm. I'm keeping this, and I'm going to check up on you. Mm-hmm. And it's, even though the movie slaps you in the face with it, a lot of people missed it. But during the Project Mayhem part, when he closes the door, the whole backside of the door is just covered in driver's licenses. Mm-hmm. And it's human sacrifices is what it says at the top above it. So all those people are people that they're trying to improve their lives. Mm-hmm. And really, like, even through Project Mayhem, the overall point is they are trying to improve people's lives.
Yeah, trying to free everyone.
In just a horrible way.
Exactly. In a very horrible way. But yes, it has a benevolent evil plan.
Well, and that goes to, again, most people, most bad people, even evil people, usually have good intentions. Mm-hmm. They're just misguided.
Oh yeah, most evil people don't think they're evil.
Yeah. Yeah, it's...
Which is why bad guys are usually more interesting in movies than good guys, because bad guys are more believable, but also because they don't see themselves as bad guys.
Well, and that's why if you look through history, like, the good guys always win, because they're the ones that wrote the stories.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you always make yourself the hero of the story that you write. So obviously that's going to turn out that way. Yep. So yeah, I would agree. But that's what I was going back to what I was saying before. It's like, it would have been probably a boring movie if he was just going through and just basically one at a time improving individual lives and trying to send that message and stuff through. Whereas like the whole point of Project Mayhem was the reset for everyone. But again, the point in the movie is satire and thought-provoking, make you think about things. It's not a blueprint for how society should be. Which is how a lot of people who don't like the movie criticize it both then and now, that what is this movie trying to tell us? It's like, no, that's not the point of the movie. This is why it's like, for me, when I rewatch the movie, I kind of ignore the violent stuff and the Project Mayhem stuff, and I focus on the other thing, because the other things are more interesting to me. But it's okay if the violence and the Project Mayhem stuff appeals to people as well. Because again, it's a movie, and its ideas are more important than some of the actions that you see carried out on screen.
Yeah, to kind of wrap it up, I guess for me, when I watch it and I'm thinking about it, it's more telling me like, yeah, there are a lot of people that are very frustrated and very angry, but violence isn't actually going to solve anything. It might make you feel better in the short term, but it's not really going to make anything better. So to me, that's the point. That's what the movie's trying to get at.
Right, because it wasn't like he's described as raising an army. It's not like he was raising an army to go around murdering people.
Right.
Again, they had a benevolent goal. that point is often lost on people. And I think that that is really the message of a movie. Opinions about the movie have certainly changed over time, but it's definitely what I would call a cult classic. Nowadays, it has
Yeah.
that status in terms of, I mean, it did poorly at the box office. It did much better on DVD. I think it has, in many ways, aged well with time. I mean, like I said, there was like a 5-year span when the world went to shit around 9/11 and then the financial crisis. That first decade of the 21st century was shitty for a lot of things, but also everything was changing with the rise of the internet and social media. Society as a whole was changing. So I think back then, and that maybe that one little 10-year period, people who were taking the movie too literally
Yeah.
may not have been very popular then. But since then, I think we've gotten away from that, and now people are able to lock into the real point of the movie, not the specifics of the movie.
Yeah, I think this movie's definitely got stay power for certain demographics.
Mm-hmm.
Generally males and males that were teenagers to 30s when this came out.
Right.
I think people much younger than that aren't going to understand because they're not going to be able to connect the same way that we did because they weren't there to feel what that felt like at that time, that social angst that was there,
Mm-hmm.
the grunge movement and whatnot. And also, they're not going to understand, well, why didn't they just get on the group chat? Why didn't they just do, those things? I don't think they're going to understand that.
Yeah, you had mentioned metal. My metal was grunge. So in the
Yeah.
90s, it was, which was also had mosh pits and
Yep.
stuff like that. So that, but also had that same underlying like angst to it. But the other thing that was kind of amusing about the grunge movement, there was also a weird like anti-consumerism angle to it. Like a lot of like Eddie Vedder, for example, and not that he was the only one from Pearl Jam, by the way, got really like in his own head about becoming too famous and becoming a sellout because that was like a big thing about the whole grunge movement. I don't know if it was similar in metal too in terms of like,
Oh, yeah.
but so that whole angst of identity and getting too caught up in consumerism again was definitely of the time, but it's not like we're no longer consumers. That still exists today. But to your other point, I guess there is that one thing that might not appeal to people is there really isn't a lot of normal female voices in this movie. In fact, there's really only one, the character played by Helena Bonham Carter, who is a fantastic character. But let's face it, she's a pretty fucked up person.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So yeah, there's no female Fight Club, and there's practically no female characters in the movie. It's pretty much all guys.
Yeah.
So some people have tried to tell me that this is a movie about toxic masculinity, and I'm like, you're missing the fucking point. But I understand. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a guy movie with mostly guys.
So two things to respond to. One, the Metal World sellout thing. There was actually a huge thing with Metallica when they cut their hair short. And it was like, oh, they sold out. They cut their hair, all that kind of stuff, which I actually just recently made that joke. A guy at work cut his hair short. Now it's started calling him a sellout and didn't quite catch on right away what I meant. The other thing I wanted to say is like the generational thing too, because I remember like when this movie, like I love this movie. And I kept talking about how good of a movie it was, and I remember like telling my grandparents that they should watch it, and they did, and they came back with like, we hate that movie. It was stupid. We don't understand it. And then it kind of clicked later. Like I never understood. Like at the time, I was like, still early 20s. Like, how could you not like this movie? It's fantastic. Later, I started thinking about, I was like, oh, they didn't have that angst. Like that workman's drone thing was a goal. That was their aspiration. And they achieved it. And they accomplished a lot in their lives by doing that. They didn't feel it the same way, so they weren't able to connect to it the same way.
Well, even like they say in the movie, it's like they talk about being the in-between generation. They had no Great War. They had no Great Depression. So it was literally a generational movie that would really appeal to people in a certain age bracket in the 90s. So yeah, older Americans it wouldn't really resonate well with them.
Which, going back to the author, all of his books are kind of that demographic. Yeah. One other quick thing I want to say real quick before I lose it, and I don't know that I've ever said it out loud, but I'm going to say it anyway, because it's confused the shit out of me every time I watch it, is his name is Robert Paulson. And the reason is because, like, again, I'm terrible at names. every time I hear that, I'm like, wasn't that an author of a book, like kids book author? And I was actually just looking that up today to confirm and remember what it was. It's actually Gary Paulson, who wrote Hatchet, which was one of my favorite books as a kid.
Well, the whole his name is Robert Paulson thing was great on multiple levels. It shows like how easy, which again, not to get political, but how easy it is for people who have decided to buy into a certain ideology to easily accept a slight alteration of that ideology and internalize it nearly immediately, as well as the movie does a very good job, because it's done intentionally, of the movement is more important than the man who started it, and it cannot be undone by the man who started it because it takes on a life of its own. And again, this is Tyler Durden making sure that plans don't get undone by the narrator, but still, it's actually a very well psychologically constructed example of that. So I enjoyed that part as well. But my other thing about his name is Robert Paulson is this movie is so fucking quotable. Like there were so many times where people would just be able to just like in this random conversation I mean the whole like talk about Fight Club was just too on the nose, but every now and then we would just be like, I would just be sitting around with friends and someone would say, his name is Robert Paulson, and we all start fucking laughing. And that's not the only one, but it's like this is so many quotes from this movie that would just like always just crack people up.
Another funny thing with that is they keep chanting his name is Robert Paulson. In the back of my head, and I don't know if anybody else ever connected this or not, but like it's a known thing to a lot of people, but also a lot of people just never realize Edward Norton's character never actually has a name.
Right.
He's just called the narrator.
Edward Norton said he called him, in his mind, the character's name was Jack, but his character does not have a name in the movie.
Right. Yeah, even in the credits is just the narrator.
Right.
And so, yeah, and like during the filming, they called him Jack and everything because I am Jack's,
yeah,
blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, that whole running gag from the movie. So that's why he had said that.
Yep.
That's why, like, even when we were arranging the time to do this podcast, you asked me if a certain time would work. And my response was, I am Jack's alarm clock.
And I mean, again, impressionable youth, like we said that all the time. Like, I am Jack's broken arm.
Right, again, it's like, were those parts in the movie funny? No, but it's just funny because it reminds you of the movie, and it reminds you, it's like, it's a fucking good movie that I enjoyed watching and enjoyed rewatching. So it's like, it was a movie that people greatly enjoyed and continue to enjoy.
Yeah.
I mean, I said it earlier that I think it's Brad Pitt's best performance. I would argue that probably anybody could have played Edward Norton's character, but he still did a pretty good job. There were a couple of things we mentioned throughout this podcast where I just kind of nitpicked on a couple of things, but overall, I love the movie as is, the whole thing.
Yeah.
I mean, again, nitpicked a couple of things, but I think it's a really solid movie.
Yeah, it was well thought out in every way, I think.
Yeah, well thought out and well executed.
All right. Well, do you want to go ahead and wrap her up?
Yeah, that's about it for us. So this has been the Fanboy and the Hater. We thank you for listening. Check out our archives to listen to some of our old episodes. And every Thursday, you can expect a brand new episode. Thanks.
Woo!